Hello, Patriots. Welcome to People's Rights Podcast. We have a new guest today. Her name is Natalie Cline. She'll be in to talk about critical race theory and how she became a target of Black Lives Matter after standing up to this insidious indoctrination of our kids in our school system. So stay tuned. We're here with Natalie Cline. Like I said before, she has become famous after she became a target of the Black Lives Matter group there in the Salt Lake area when she stood up against critical race theory. Natalie, tell us a little bit about you and how you became a school board member and a little bit of your background and, what makes you qualified these days for the job that you're doing and for the stance that you have taken.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you, and anything I can do to help people understand what's happening, I am happy to do. There are certainly other people out there that are probably far more qualified as far as their backgrounds. I am a mom. That's all I ever wanted to be, but I did get deeply involved in following what's happening in education after I went to the United Nations back in 2015, and I sat in these rooms full of activists and listened to their plans to come after our children, to indoctrinate them in their ideologies.
Was that the convention they had in Salt Lake City in the convention center there?
So no, that was just a few years ago, or I don't know, was it 2-3 years ago now? So the first time I went to the United Nations was in New York in 2015. I went back there 2 years ago, and then they came to Utah. So a few times that I've been to the United Nations, and it seems to be the stomping grounds for activists to come up with their plans and in fact, I remember sitting in one room there was probably 75 people in that room, and I was the only one besides my sister who came with me who was not transgender in that room. And that was pretty surreal. And to hear them laugh and joke about how they were going to mainstream this, and in another room where it was LGBT activists, where the speaker actually said, "We will not stop until this is in every classroom in America."
When they were talking about critical race theory, or just
so critical race theory never even hit my radar until this last fall.
Gotcha.
So I got into this out of concern for our children being indoctrinated into the LGBTQ agenda. Gotcha. And through comprehensive sexuality education. And that's, when I first went to the United Nations, I wasn't thinking about education specifically until I heard those things. And then I became very interested in protecting our schools and our children, knowing that they were the target.
Oh my goodness.
So I have 4 children of my own. I have 4 stepchildren, and that's family is everything to me, and freedom, and my faith in God. And anything beyond that, if there's something that's going to threaten those things, you can bet I'm going to stand against it.
Good.
That's kind of who I am.
Were all your kids in the school system then?
In 2015, when I first went, yes, they were. Within a year or two, I pulled out. My 2 oldest had graduated, and my other 2 I pulled out when they were in 9th and 10th grade when I moved back to Utah. So I wasn't in Utah when I first went. Actually, I was. But when I came back, I pulled my kids out. So that is, when you see what's happening, you have to get your kids to safety. But that said, all of the other kids that are being affected by this, that are still in the schools, that's our future. That's who will be leading our country.
Absolutely.
And so we can't just opt out and say, well, my family's not going to be a part of that. It will affect all of us. And so it behooves us to each still stay in the fight to help protect those kids that are still in the schools, and in effect, protect our freedoms and our liberty. Otherwise, ultimately, especially with critical race theory, this is the end game to take down our nation. and we will lose our freedoms.
Absolutely. So let me ask you another question. After that, did you decide to run for school board member in the Alpine School District?
So I'm not actually, so Alpine School District is part of my state school district. I'm actually a member of the state school board. And on that note,
Gotcha.
whatever I share here, these are my own opinions and based on my own study and research. I'm not representing the board here as I speak today. So
Understood. Very, very well understood. And so, so how long have you been a member of the school board in the state of
So I
Indiana?
was just elected and sworn in January.
Okay.
So it's been an exciting ride so far. Yeah, I ran last year my campaign and won overwhelmingly in my area.
Wow.
And I ran a very open campaign on these issues because that's the only reason I ran. I have no political ambition. I just want to make sure our families and our kids are safe.
Well, that's encouraging to hear, that somebody like you with that openness and running against that agenda has been elected in that area, right? Because that
Yeah.
area is turning more liberal by the day as we speak, right?
Well, I think the people in my area are very good, solid people. They love the country, they by and large, but that opposition side is growing and in large part because they are making converts out of our kids. So
Absolutely.
parents are very concerned.
Very good, very good. So, you became a target of the Black Lives Matter group, isn't that right? How did that come about?
Uh, yes.
What happened? I mean, did you get
So
threats?
all like I said, well, all year last year, I ran a very open campaign and I would share links to the new Black Lives Matter curriculum and other things that they put out. So just sharing what they themselves are promoting in their own words or links to their own sites. And somehow I was protected while I was running and I never got any pushback or anything from anyone. But as soon as I got elected, and I kept posting those same kind of things I've posted for years and years, suddenly it was a very different story because of my position. I think they thought, okay, she's a threat. She has a voice. She has people that are actually listening to her now. And so they came at me. I had also posted a video from the Utah Pride Center Educator Conference that they had just had, where they actually are talking, they were talking about how they can incorporate these ideologies into the classroom and literally coming after our kids with their ideologies instead of following state statute that prohibits that. And so I put that out there because it was a live link after the fact. I had registered for the conference. I was able to get on and get a live link, or not a, but a public link. After I posted it and they realized that the wrong people were watching it, they quickly changed the setting on the video to make it private and then accused me of sharing a private video. So it wasn't just Black Lives Matter, it was the Utah Pride Center. They both came at me like all at once, like over a weekend, like a 48-hour period. They just descended upon my state school board Facebook page. And you can go there, Natalie Cline, state school board, and just look through the comments. I mean, it's just horrific. It's just a smoldering dumpster
And it's
fire
Natalie
now.
J. Cline
I
with
don't
a
usually
C,
go on
right?
there.
Cline with a C, not with a K.
Cline with a C. Natalie J. Cline is the name of my public Facebook page.
Very good. Were you physically threatened by them or?
Oh, so Lex Scott, who is the leader of the Black Lives Matter Utah chapter, wrote a very threatening letter that she sent to the board asking for my removal. She posted a video on her Facebook, the Black Lives Matter Facebook page, where she says racists must be destroyed, and targeted her whole video was about me and taking me down. Natalie Cline, in the most intimidating voice that she could come up with, and went on for probably 10 minutes or so, just to scare me as much as she could, and saying that I'm a racist and every other name in the book, and then saying in the same breath, racists must be destroyed. So yes, that was very much a threat in my
Oh
opinion.
my, this little young woman from Utah became a big target,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
right.
goodness. Very interesting.
But that's the world we're living in. If you speak truth, and again, it's just sharing their own materials that caused them to call me a racist and a homophobe and a white supremacist. And
how are things now with that? Or have they calmed down? Have they stepped up the game? Where are we at with all that?
yeah, I think they've moved on to other targets, and they've realized that I'm not going to be quiet. So I just keep pushing along and sharing what needs to be shared. And there has been um, I've shared things that are happening in the local schools and schools throughout Utah. And because I was giving parents the information that they want, and I believe that they deserve, the name of the schools or the teachers or whatever, so that they could go in and make sure their kids were safe. We had educational entities in Utah put great pressure on the state school board to go back through and do an overhaul of their board bylaws in order to rein me in. I was never trying to, get teachers fired or create problems that way, or, I simply was trying to let parents know so that they could take action and be aware, because parents are very much kept in the dark these days. So they have since gone through and changed board bylaws. So anything I post now, or if I, speak in a venue or whatever, I have to have a disclaimer that says I don't speak for the board. Um, and so they have tried to tighten things down to limit my freedom of speech, or at least to protect themselves from things
Tell us
that
the
I might.
names of those organizations against that have done that.
Just different local educational entities. You've got the Utah State Superintendents Association, or the Utah State Boards Association, or the local districts that feel threatened because somebody's telling the truth. And again, I've talked to them and said, my goal is to be able to work with you if possible to help make things more transparent for parents. They've only come to me because the system wasn't working. They would go to the teacher or to the principal or to their local board members, and they would just get the runaround. Everybody would point the finger to somebody else and say, it's not my responsibility, it's theirs. You have to talk to them. But everybody pointed to the other person and sending them in circles. And so they would end up coming to me. And so now that's kind of where we're at. That's what brought so much attention to this whole critical race theory situation, because kids were being taught these tenets of critical race theory in their classrooms. White students were being made to feel bad about their skin color, or told that they were guilty or responsible for things that other white people did in the past, like holding, having slaves or whatever the cause might be. So that ended up becoming a state issue. Because I was sharing what these kids were experiencing in their own classes, and yet their local boards weren't responding. And that's why it became such a big deal. And now you've seen, lots of parents waking up and going to their local school board meetings and speaking out and taking on that fight, realizing that I can't fight at your district. I can't know what's happening in your child's classroom. I've gotten stories from people all over the state. And so I know it's not an isolated incident. It's happening everywhere. But I cannot, my role is up at the state level. And so I'm doing what I can at the state level. We were able to get the attention of legislators, and they worked hard to bring this to the forefront in an extraordinary special session the other week, when the governor wouldn't put it on his own special session. And they passed identical resolutions in both the House and Senate, saying that they're not okay with these tenets being taught in our classrooms in Utah, and putting the onus back on the state school board to address this issue. And so this last week, the board had worked for over 4 hours, we debated over a new rule that would put some boundaries or protections in place to rein in teachers that are teaching these tenets of critical race theory as though they're fact.
Right. And for those that don't know what the tenets are, it's all about telling all these kids that white people are responsible for all the injustices that have been perpetrated upon people of other colors or nationalities or whatever that may be. It's all about racism, right? But I also understand that all these tenets are being introduced to every single subject matter, like mathematics, science, history, English, language arts, all the
Right.
subject matters, right? I mean, they are introducing
Yeah.
all these concepts through every single subject. Isn't that true?
Right, right. So critical race theory is like rose-colored glasses, but it's race-colored glasses where they're taught to see everything through the lens of race and to find racism in everything and to assume that there's racism present in everything. And so far from fixing any problems that that exist, obviously there is racism in the world, and there always will be because people are imperfect and people have prejudices, and that's not going to go away. We can work towards improving that and diminishing that as we teach positive life skills and positive outlooks. But critical race theory only deconstructs. It only looks at things through a negative lens, and we will never rise out of the problem of racism using that lens. It will only fuel the fire because they are trained to find it in everything. And so far from getting rid of it, it's going to exacerbate it and
Absolutely.
find it where it isn't and make
Right.
people, innocent people, guilty of things that they never did.
Exactly. And you know what is funny, I grew up in Puerto Rico. I was born of a Cuban family that left Cuba in 1961, 2 years after Castro had taken over. And my dad was a civilian. He was an architect. He was married, had been married for 13 years, had two kids, my brother and my sister, 9 and 5 years old. And my dad tried to kill Castro 3 times. I mean, imagine
Wow.
that, a civilian that was not involved in politics or government or anything like that. And so, anyways, as I was growing up in Puerto Rico, in the I was born in '62. So in the '70s, a lot of the Puerto Ricans that had left the country went to New York in the 1950s and '60s. But in the '70s, they were returning back to Puerto Rico. And I remember listening to all these Puerto Ricans talk about how, the Americans were so racist, that they were treated so unfairly, that they were called spics and all kinds of names, and they were treated like dirt. And then, the '80s came about. And in the '80s, I remember people from the Dominican Republic, which is a neighboring island of Puerto Rico, coming over to Puerto Rico. And the Dominicans were starting to say that the Puerto Ricans were racist because they were treated unfairly and like
Yeah.
dirt and all kinds of things. And then
Yeah.
in the '90s, and as you know, the Dominican Republic and Haiti share one island. It's called Dominica,
Right.
right? And the Haitians were crossing the border to the Dominican Republic, and the Haitians were saying that the Dominicans were racist because
Right.
they were being treated like dirt and
Yeah.
being called names and all kinds of things. So what
Yeah.
you just said is so true. Racism is endemic of every group in this world, and we can
Right.
only work to make it better, right? Correct. So
Right.
um,
Right.
so anyways, tell us a little bit more about critical race theory. And I understand that you might have some material to share on your screen. If you do, feel you're welcome to pop that up at any
Okay.
time. So
Okay. Well, one of the things I just wanted to touch on, many that are okay with this ideology, they would try to counter what we're saying, saying that we're not. It's not about individual racism; it's about systemic racism, right? But when they say systemic racism, often that's just a cop out because it's a boogeyman. Well, not boogeyman, but it's like ghost hunting, right? If you say systemic racism, you can't pin it down on any certain issue, right? Or find the actual problem. It's just this elusive thing, and that's actually used to their benefit, because if there is nothing you can actually isolate as being racist, then you can continue to assert your claims and take power, right? It's very much a power play for those that they call themselves marginalized or historically underrepresented. It's a way for them to gain power. And it puts us on the defensive, right? Because most of us are very good people that love all people, and we are looking at the content of people's character. We are trying to see people for who they are. And when suddenly we're accused of being racist, or that the system is racist, it puts us on the defense, which helps them, right? We can't win this fight by going on defense. We have to stay on the offense. It's like Richard Johnson of the Booker T. Washington Initiative. He said, it's like racehorses. He never met a racehorse that won the race by looking backwards, right? In fact, they put blinders on the horse, right? So that they don't even see side to side. They're not distracted. They're focused on their goal. And if we want to restore liberty and justice in our country, we have to be so focused, because their goal is to distract us any way they can in order to keep us off balance and on the defensive. We have to know what it is we're going for, which is a restoration of our constitutional liberties based on principles of freedom taught by our founders and in our founding documents. And if we don't know what those are, we are easily distracted, easily manipulated, emotionally manipulated. That's what's happening in the schools with a lot of what they call social and emotional learning. We're getting away from academics, and we're moving into this psychological realm where everything's focused on this, it's just mind games, right? And that becomes the whole focus, instead of, so when Johnny hit Bobby, you need to apologize. They'll take one instance like that and use it as an excuse to roll out a whole school-wide program to teach about diversity, equity, inclusivity, anti-racism. I mean, they're looking for one little thing to roll out this whole ideology. And it's dangerous. It is what is, if there is such thing as systemic racism, this is it.
Right.
They are institutionalizing racism. And in their minds, it's justified. Ibram Kendi, he said something really interesting. He's the one that wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. He's quoted by our President Biden, because Biden is rolling out this whole US civics history curriculum that is based on critical race theory tenets. And he quotes Ibram Kendi as an authoritarian in promoting that curriculum. But Ibram Kendi said, the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination.
Oh my goodness.
And if you understand what anti-racism is, an entire ideology. It does not mean not racist.
Right. Right.
And most people are, this whole language, this play on language, they're using all these words that we think mean one thing. But if you actually peel back the layers, in critical race theory, it means the exact opposite. And so people are getting very confused by this whole issue, because they haven't peeled back the layers. They haven't studied what the critical race theorists themselves have said. Right. They only look at the packaging. And there's a quote by Tad R. Callister. He said, let's see. Yeah, he said the solutions the world is promoting, basically, the anti-racism, diversity, equity, inclusion. He didn't say these, but this is what I was thinking about when I read his quote, are nothing less than time bombs wrapped with glitter and a glamorous bow. Ultimately, the day of reckoning will come and the explosion will occur. One cannot circumvent God's commands and expect to escape the divine consequences, regardless of how decorated the package may be or how cosmetically appealing the language may sound.
Absolutely. Very good quote, and very great thought. Let me ask you a question, Natalie. What do you think is the end game, the overall end game of this whole introduction of critical race theory into the school system?
So back in about 2010, we were introduced to Common Core for schools. And that, they came up with standards for reading and math, and they said they would never create, national standards for the others, science, and which they have. They've come up with standards for all of them now, despite the promises. And the new Educating America for Democracy is the new Common Core version on steroids for social studies and US history and civics education, which I said, like I told you before, is just laced with critical race theory throughout it. And there's these federal grants to for local schools to encourage them to adopt this curriculum, right? Because curriculum is chosen locally. So it bypasses the state school board. And anyway, so when they introduced Common Core, they focused on everything but social studies. And so now kids don't know our founding documents. They don't understand the principles or how the system of government works. And so it's created this crisis, this constitutional crisis or civics crisis. And people on both sides of the aisle recognize this. I personally think it was done intentionally so that it created this vacuum that now is begging to be filled. Right. And you've got people on, like I said, on both sides of the aisle that are clamoring to get their version in to fill that void. But the left has been very, like I said, this was planned. They've been they've been creating their version for a long time, and been doing it very carefully. And if you actually look at it, the action civics or civics engagement is some of the terms that they use for it. It's very much like Mao's Cultural Revolution. It's in place of teaching principles of liberty, they're teaching kids to be activists for liberal causes and calling that civic engagement. So this is I believe the end game is to turn our children into activists in the name of civic engagement for liberal causes, and in that process, we will lose our freedoms and our liberties.
Absolutely. So really, what they're trying to do is to destroy the country as it exists, right? Destroy all the constitutional principles that our founders set upon this nation, and really destroy what the republic is, right? Or which, pretty much has been destroyed already, but take it further down deep into the hole and cover it with dirt so it can never be seen or smelled again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's why they say systemic racism, because if the system, meaning our nation, our state, if it's truly racist, then the only way to solve it is to tear down that system.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Yeah, I can see the end game.
And that is their only solution. They offer no productive or constructive solutions. It's all about tearing down.
Absolutely. It's just part of the puzzle, right? That they have been building for ages now, because, this whole thing started when they instituted the American school system in 1900s with John Dewey and Charles Mann and all these people they were communists, they were communists, and they took control of the education system in the country, and they have ramped it up really high in the last 2 decades with the introduction of No Child Left Behind by whom I thought was a great president, George Bush. Since I've woken up and realized what awful situation we find ourselves in, right? And then Barack Obama introducing Common Core in the
Yeah.
2008, right? So
Right.
it
And
has,
then the Every Student Succeeds Act, which came next.
pardon me, say that
Yeah.
again.
The Every Student Succeeds Act is what we're under now,
Oh,
ESSA. And that is just, they said it was going to solve the No Child Left Behind and the Common Core problem. And every time they bring in a solution, it actually is just pushing it farther down the field. It's
yes. Well, I have a 21-year-old son, and back in 2010, I took him out of the school system, recognizing the indoctrination that was happening in the school system and the way that some of these teachers acted, and I was just dismayed with that. And I thought, there's got to be a better way of educating this boy. So I pulled him out of the school system, and we started homeschooling. Then we found an alternative principal-based private school here in St. George, and we put them in that. And we helped them become a critical thinker, which is what all these kids should be taught. What to be, what to do and
right.
what to be is critical thinkers, and think outside the box. They want to enclose you in this box, and here's what you need to learn. And you have to frame everything right in here. And this critical race theory is just furthering what they've been trying to accomplish for many years, and it's all about to
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
clamp down and
Collapse.
crumble and everything
Yeah.
else. So um, I'd like to jump to the next subject. What are we to do as free people to fight this and protect our children?
Okay. So this is the big question, right? And what it comes down to is the exact opposite of what critical race theory is teaching. Critical race theory uses blame and shame, and it's the opposite of personal accountability and personal responsibility. And until we accept personal responsibility and we're looking for somebody else to solve the problem for us, we will never get out of this mess. We need God, and we need to be willing to let him prevail in our lives and go where he leads us, right? Because every parent is given that divine stewardship over their child to know what their child needs. And we have, in large part, parents have turned that off and have turned their children over to a system and put their trust in a system instead of in God. And God will help parents know how to do this. And ultimately, that's where we have to get to. In the meantime, but ultimately, many of the schools have signed contracts with technology companies. If your school's a Google school or a Microsoft school, they have their own teacher development programs or trainings that are required because the schools have signed contracts with these companies. So even if we put a rule or pass a law to try to rein these things in, it's still really hard to change mindsets of teachers. It's hard to change contracts that have already been signed. It's hard to change policies and procedures and practices that have been embedded now for years. This is not new in Utah. It's just coming to light. These things are deeply embedded. And to change those things is much harder than to pass a rule or a resolution or a bill. Okay, so even if it's really easy for us to go, okay, they passed a law, we're good, everything's good. That is the worst thing you could do, is turn off your brain and go back to sleep and think everything's fine because somebody passed something. Because when you see how entrenched this is, and this is why we've gotten such big backlash, because I honestly don't think the schools know how to function anymore without these crutches, because everything has become centered on these programs and processes, this ideology of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And And so many jobs they've hired so many people to help perpetuate this, that you would have so many people out of a job if they truly were able to get rid of it. Right. And so these people are fighting back as if their lives depended on, because their livelihoods depend on it. And they don't know how, our system doesn't know how to think critically anymore, because they've been spoon fed. They've been given scripts to read to kids instead of actually knowing how to teach anymore. The teacher colleges are a big part of the problem. The teachers come out of those schools indoctrinated. And so it spills into the classroom, because they're teaching what they think is true, right? They don't think of it as indoctrination. They just think they're
protecting their jobs, right? Yeah.
Right. So you've got a lot of, you've got some good teachers, and those teachers are very threatened by, they're afraid to lose their jobs, right? And not have a livelihood. And so they're in that hard place of, do I go along to get along? Do I speak out or just be quiet? And most of them are choosing to be quiet. They count on us as much as our kids count on us to speak out in their behalf, because they can't, or they've signed contracts that say they can't speak out about these things, right? So we have to get in and create relationships, find the good teachers, help them know that you back them up, go to your school boards and speak in a way that educates the other parents on what's happening in the schools, not in a way that is confrontational with the board, because the board doesn't make all of these decisions. They don't even know what's going on in a lot of ways, what's happening at them, right? So we have to speak in a way that helps others see what is happening, and gives them an opportunity to come out of that place and come to the side of truth, while saving face, right? That's the only way to win people over, because no one wants to look like the bad guy or be attacked. There are bad people out there that are actively pushing this, and you'll know who they are when you end up trying to have a productive dialogue with them, and it goes nowhere. It's like hitting your head on a brick wall. So the other thing is when you go to speak to your teacher or the principal or your board member, you need to go together with other concerned parents, because every parent I know that has gone in by themselves is dismissed, or their concerns are minimized and swept under the rug, or they're told, you're the only one that has a problem with this. I've not heard from anybody else. And yet that parent will then end up finding many other parents in their schools that have the same story. Said, I went in to talk to him about the same thing and I got the same result. So you have to go together so that there's witnesses, and they can't easily dismiss you, right? So utahparentsunited.org, I would recommend all concerned parents go on there, sign up for their emails, their newsletters. And then also on their website, you can sign up for your local Parent United group based on the name of your school district. This is not connected to the district. This is strictly for parents to have a safe place where they can connect with other concerned parents, and they can start planning and strategizing together how to take back their schools. And they've got all kinds of resources on there to help you get educated on the issues, help you know what to look for so that you can recognize when it's in your school. And I can promise you it's in every school to some degree or another.
It is, absolutely. Tell us the name of the organization again and where to find it.
utahparentsunited.org.
Utah Parents
and that just
United.
utahparentsunited.org. Okay. And that's going to give you the tools that you need. You can follow them on Facebook as well. But we started that as a response to, in an effort to help parents here in Utah, knowing that because the left is so organized and they have so much money and they've been doing this for so long, the only way we can win is if we all join together. The parents have to come together in this fight, and not just in small clusters, but this is our statewide parent army, right? But we're organizing parents at their local level so that we can make a difference. And they are making a difference. We have over 13,000 now on Parents United or Utah Parents United. And we've got the ear of the state board, the governor, the legislature. This is a way for parents to help get their voices heard.
Very good. So you mentioned we have their ear. Have we had any wins or any advance in our costs against critical race theory yet here in the state of Utah?
Well, the fact that the legislature, both the House and Senate, took up their own, albeit identical resolutions a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that is because of the work that we are doing.
And what is the resolution?
They've been, because we have the parents right, we've had parents submit their own stories of what's happening in their schools, and we put them all, or Utah Parents United put them all together and presented them to the state school board superintendent, so that she can see with her own eyes exactly what's happening. It's not just a boogeyman. It's not just, one person saying this and everybody copying their story, and everybody has their own unique stories of how this is happening. So we are bringing transparency to that, to our leaders. Everybody's been writing the legislators. That's why they felt such an urgency to bring this forward when they did and deal with it.
And tell us, what is the resolution that they took on?
So the resolution they passed basically says they are not okay with critical race theory tenets being taught in our schools, and putting that burden squarely on the Utah State Board of Education to put something in place to deal with that, saying if you don't do it, we will. And everybody likes local control, right? And basically when the legislature says they'll get involved if we don't, in dealing with it if we don't, because under the Utah State Constitution, Amendment 10, it puts the general control and supervision of the education system on the board to deal with. And so the legislature said, it's in the Constitution, in the state constitution, that's your job, do your job, or we will get involved. And if they get involved, it means money, because they control the purse strings, right? So right. Even though it's a resolution that they passed and not a bill or a statute, a resolution is not binding like a law, but it is basically saying you do this or we will pass a law, and you won't like it. It will affect the funding that we give you.
Well, that's a pretty good step forward, I would say. So, the involvement of the parents is very critical in every local school district. They need to get organized and go to the school board meetings and speak about this, and bring up the examples and be eloquent about it and firm, and hold their feet to the fire, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Very good.
Exactly. There's also, it's important for parents to realize, just because we pass a resolution or a board rule, and there's a bill, I think there's still going to be an anti-critical race theory bill run in the general session in January, if not sooner, because critical race theory affects more than just schools. It's in higher ed, it's in businesses, our governor just a few weeks ago hired a new equity and inclusion accelerator for the state. So those are positions based on critical race theory tenets.
Absolutely.
And so even if we pass something, it doesn't mean it's rooted out. That's the job of the parents now, to root it out and to find where it's still creeping in, where it's getting in, and bring it to the attention and say, this resolution or this rule says this can't be here. What are you going to do to get it out? Because it is so embedded in all of our technology that comes from places, national organizations.
Yeah, it comes from Google and Microsoft and all big corporations.
How do you get that out?
Yeah, how do you get it out?
That's the big question. And so it may be asking the impossible, quite frankly, because it is so entrenched now.
Absolutely.
So that brings me to my next point. If parents truly want to protect their children from this, they're going to have to find other options.
Right.
Besides public school. We will do our best to minimize it or to pull it back in the public schools. But where we don't have the majority of teachers have been pulled into this, and we're going to have opposition every step of the way.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, there are great alternatives out there. Educationtransformed.org is another website I would encourage you to go to. They specialize in helping families create custom alternatives that fit their family needs. So if you've got, you know, a stay-at-home mom that wants to teach, they will come in, they will help you know, they'll help you gather good curriculum that fits what you want for your children. They'll help you know how to teach, how to set up a schedule, how to, you know, whatever it is you need.
All right. Give us
Some
that name
people,
again, Natalie.
so educationtransformed.org.
Okay.
Okay, they will help you build a custom education solution for your child, your family, whether it's traditional homeschooling, whether it's a homeschool co-op, whether it's a micro school or a pod. You know, and then we've got people that are working on creating private schools to set up throughout
Right.
the state so that parents have an option, and there are people working night and day trying to get things in place so that parents have somewhere to
Absolutely.
go before fall comes. Is
Absolutely.
the
If yeah,
issues.
yeah, it's it's that same thought I've had for many years, or actually for many months. It really, if you don't want to be influenced by Babylon, just don't be in Babylon, right? So exiting the system is important, and I'm trying to find ways myself of exiting every single system that this Babylonian system we have that has been created for us, and I just don't want to participate in it.
Yeah.
And we have to find ways to be able to do things like that. So
If we
um,
want to be free people, we have to educate our children in the principles of freedom, and they're not being taught those in school anymore.
absolutely,
They're just
absolutely,
not. So
yeah. And the other point is,
whatever our children are taught, it's going to be our free. It's going to be our future. So
yeah, they're
if we
going to be
want a
taking
better
over
future,
the
we have to
society,
take that
right?
upon ourselves.
Yeah, they'll
Mhm.
take on the society at some point, when they're in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. And, they're going to have all these ingrained beliefs that have been taught, from an early age. So it is critically important to take part in this. And of course, this is
Yeah.
not only for Utah. We've been talking about Utah, but this is going on throughout the whole country. So, whatever you see happening here is probably happening in
Yes.
your state as well. So, Natalie, this has been very, very educational for
Well,
my.
we used to be. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I was going to say, um,
Yeah. I was just going to say,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I think we have a delay.
Yeah, we do.
um, we used to be in a kind of a bubble. You know, Utah used to kind of do things the Utah way, but because of technology, everything is happening on a large scale across the country at the same time. We're not really behind things anymore. It's happening here just like it's happening in New York and California, because we're all using the same systems now
Right.
that bring it
Everybody has
straight
one of
into our
these,
schools.
right? Everybody has one of these. That's the problem. Okay. Well, this has been just incredibly educational for me. I hope it has been for all of our podcast followers. And before we close, would you have any closing statements to make? Anything that we've left behind that you think is important, or just anything else that would help us to just close this podcast?
Got a bad connection all of a sudden.
Uh-oh.
So anyway, I'm grateful to people like you, and I know there are groups all over the state that have come together. This is really a blessing in disguise, because we were so disconnected from each other for so long, and now we're coming together as a community to actually solve real problems, by coming together and focusing on what's most important: family, faith, freedom. and doing what we can to put things in place for this rising generation so that they have an opportunity to enjoy those freedoms that we for too long have taken for granted. And so I'm so grateful for all of those that are stepping up to the plate and doing that hard work to reclaim and restore our freedoms and our constitutional republic. When we do that, I believe we will see miracles. And so great things are in store. We have a lot of work and it's going to be hard and we will face great opposition. But if we can stay focused on the goal and not get distracted, we will come through this.
Absolutely.
And I firmly believe that.
Absolutely. We have God with us, right? So
Yes.
what else could we ask for? Now we have to put in our energy and our faith forward and do the work. This is what we have to do. We were called to do this. So thank you so much, Natalie. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the channel and also subscribe or be a part of the network of People's Rights, peoplesrights.org. Sign up. You'll become part of a network where we stand in the defense of individual rights for our neighbors. So, what we say here is it is the duty of free people to defend their neighbors' rights. So we are a network. We're not an organization, and we have the ability to text everybody in our surrounding area here in the state of Utah, and we have the whole state divided into different geographical locations from 1 to 13, where we can send a text or an email out to everybody and call people to action if one of our neighbors' rights is being violated, or we want to advertise a freedom-loving event, informational event, or anything like that. We have the ability to do that with a snap of a finger, so to speak. So subscribe to peoplesrights.org and become part of the network. We are people who take action in the defense of our neighbors' rights. So thank you so much, Natalie. It's been great to have you, and we wish you the best. If you ever need anything else, we're here to serve, and we're here to help put the word out in whatever activities or events or help that you might need. If those people come knocking at your door to harass you, you call your area assistant or call me or anybody, and we'll bring people to your door in your defense, in peaceful defense, and we'll have them surround you in brotherly love and camaraderie. How's that?
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I will keep that in mind. If we may be facing that soon. Who knows?
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, so we're signing out, and we'll see you next time here on the People's Rights Podcast. This is Raul Evia, and thank you, Natalie Cline, again. Thank you so much. Have a great day.